Hey guys, it's Matt, welcome to Speed Tutor, and today we're going to be looking at something different, and this is going to be my perspective, so a game developer's perspective on Battlefield 2042, the current state of it, and just remember that it's my opinion. You can choose to agree or disagree. Be sure to comment down with your opinion on some of the things that I'm going to mention. So we're going to look at the UI, the user experience, we're going to look at the different modes that they've got in there, how I feel that they could have done things better, how some of the things feel quite rushed, and how we could go with some help from some fantastic Reddit users who've changed and added and thought about some new features and sort of experience improvements that you can go for. If you like it, do throw a like on the video and let me know what you think. I just wanted to take a second to look at the specialists and whether I think that they work in Hazard Zone or the actual main game, and whether I think some abilities need strengthening, reducing, or sort of changing around. Now, Sundance has the wingsuit ability with the grenade belt, which I think is a mismatch really, and I think she should swap with McKay, and she should get the grappling hook, which makes it more relevant to grapple up, wingsuit down, be an aggressive play, whereas McKay should get the grenade and maybe have the ability to have more starting ammo. I feel as if it makes more sense for them to swap round, then he can be a little bit more powerful in regards to he has some choice in grenades and starting ammo, and Sundance can be able to grapple up. Dozer seems pretty good with his blast shield. It shouldn't reflect bullets, I don't think, but it seems okay for both normal and Hazard Zone. Irish can deploy multiple covers, which seems fair enough, and maybe if you're stood within the range of the fortification, you take less blast damage or something like that to add another reason to be able to use it and to be able to stand near it as teammates. The Boris with his sentry gun seems okay, it becomes more effective. It could maybe resupply ammo if you stood near the sentry gun to promote people using it. Casper is pretty good on both sides because he's got the recon drone and the ability to detect movement. Rao, I think in both cases for Hazard Zone and normal, is a little bit weak and should maybe have an ability that if enemies are close by, you can do an EMP and it should block out or fuzz, especially when you see like the tornado and it fuzzes out the UI or the minimap, to make him more relevant for people to use across the modes. Pike I've not used, but seems like a very viable class to be able to spot enemies and otherwise. Falk, very good for healing characters, and they seem to have improved the healing gun so it actually finds characters more easily. Maybe she should be able to revive with the healing gun as long as you're close range. Maybe it takes a little bit of extra time to revive in that case. Angel seems like a really all well-rounded character because he gives ammo and armor, and you can call in a loadout drop which will replenish all supplies including grenades and rocket launchers, and he does revive allies with full armor. So I think he's probably one of the better classes that we have on here for supporting, because I think that this game does suffer from actually running out of ammo really fast. And I wanted to talk about loading into a match, because here we see that whatever squad I would be part of, it would show the cards here, which is perfectly fine. I like that, that's fine. I feel as if you maybe should show this screen with the cards just underneath their feet here, rather than showing again the player cards, then the player. As many people have mentioned, though, if I go to this is just with bots in this match, if I go to the actual squads and players, I can actually change my squad. I can't change who I'm playing with. If I've been matched with my friends and they're on my team, I want to join their squad or maybe mix that around. I've got no choice. I just have to stick with whatever I've got. Also, when I press the middle touchpad, it brings up a really large map, which is in the center of the screen, which in previous versions of Battlefield, it used to be the bottom left, which would enlarge your minimap, because I feel as if that's all you need. You don't need to see a massive map encroaching all the way over your screen. And I feel that when you can switch between selecting specialists, loadout and weapons, this is just a little bit awful to navigate. It's kind of like sometimes you have to press L1, R2 to be able to navigate between these, and as much as I'm used to playing games and using UIs, it just gets a little bit overbearing for me to remember which one was I needed to press R1 and R2 and be able to cycle between the two, and it just needs, I feel as if it needs ironing out. And I want to mention here, when we're on the spawn screen, usually I like to spawn on a squad which is the green players, and there's no real easy way to get to the end of this other than awkwardly navigating between the flags and the people as if we're transitioning between them along a sort of vertical and horizontal. I just want to be able to flick my analog stick and take me down to here, or give me a button like square to take me down to here, L1, R1, whatever it may be, to take me down to here, to be able to just cycle these in a list. You can't even then, once you're on here, cycle down. You shouldn't be on this map anymore. You should be, as a part of your squad, you can use the directional or the analog to go up and down, and it doesn't happen, and I find it really, really awkward to do that. The user on Reddit has made some adjustments to a lot of the UI in these situations, and I will just going to show these on the screen, which I think are really awesome. For whatever reason in Battlefield, we don't have a scoreboard, and it's got some squad information on the left and then this information on the right. But you can see that this user, Ibidibidoo, has actually added the scoreboard, which actually still incorporates some of the other information that they want to be able to show you. So I think it's a nice way to still have a scoreboard with other information. You could even squeeze the previous information on the left and keep this on the right, but have the scoreboard condensed in the middle. Just have something nice, or have the scoreboard along the top, which scrolls here, and have your other information at the bottom. Just something to keep a scoreboard in check. Have a way for somebody to be able to tell that if somebody is going to come and revive you or has a revive request. So you can see that maybe it would show you who's a medic or who's a specific character that's close to you with what distance, so you can see what's coming along. It's to show when you're getting locked on and what direction you're getting locked on from, so you can make an assumption of where that's coming from within the game. The firing mode actually on the main UI, so you can actually tell what firing mode you're on, because sometimes you have to zoom in ADS to actually see this, which I find very strange. On the map, we don't actually have an indicator for our player, so we don't actually know where we are sometimes. So it's nice to show that here's an indicator from the same person on Reddit who's added this, so it would be nice to see where you actually are at any given time. So here I wanted to touch into Conquest and being able to spawn in when you spawn on a new map. And right here I am on the spawn screen, and this is where people can jump into a vehicle and choose what. So I've just waited a second before I navigate to whatever I want to navigate to. So I'm trying to spawn in on just a vehicle. There's no vehicles left, but I think there should be a list of vehicles along the top or something like that, which people have already jumped into, which have got still space left for you to helicopters along here, middle tanks, and then the right is, let's say, just transport vehicles, and let players jump into those as long as the space is in them, and they can fade out accordingly. Or even on the vehicle selection screen, you could keep it so when I select it, like here, it shows there's open slots which shows humans in them, so I can actually spawn in them and be able to get going straight away, because I think it's bad games design to just let one person jump in a vehicle and then awkwardly wait for everybody to jump in thereafter, because as you can see here, we all spawn of 64 players on one side, and there's probably 30 players who are just running around aimlessly looking for a vehicle that they can jump into, and nice enough that some people have waited around to pick other players up, and it seems like such a counterintuitive way for this to work, because with the map size being so ginormous, you've got people having to get on top of tanks and stuff to get in, and we're all left behind. And I was just making a point that we're just left to fend for ourselves and run probably for a couple of minutes to get to the next objective. I also find it a little bit strange towards the end of the game when you get the little celebrations for the characters. It shows who was in your squad, where you placed, how many kills. That's all great. There is no end scoreboard, which I find weird. Unlike when I'm choosing to look at players that I've previously played with, there's no actual information on them other than a basic card. And I can't click to see legacy stats or see how they're doing, and there's no page that you can select for yourself to be able to show your lifetime stats other than on your collections, and you'll be able to see if you look at a particular weapon badge to be able to see how many you've got. And I wanted to have a quick talk about Hazard Zone, and I think it's a cool mode to get into, and just if you've got a squad of people to be able to match up with them and be able to load into a random map and be able to play like a 32 player based mode, which has an objective of collecting the drives and be able to collect currency to be able to upgrade your items. Now we're in the screen which is the loadout just before we get into a match, and you can see the amount of credits that I've got from previous games, and then I can choose to spawn with different weapons, different secondaries, gadgets, throwables, and tacticals. I believe personally, Hazard Zone, you should be allowed to do this before you even get into a match itself, or you should be able to purchase the weapons and the sidearms, and once you get to this screen, you might have then, you can see that there's been 7 ammo boxes or 7 medipacks purchased, or you could purchase more if you really need it, but I think you should be able to set loadouts before you even get to, just before the 60 seconds that you're going to choose. And in my personal opinion, Hazard Zone should have its own progression system, and you could argue that having progression systems, you know, outside of the other modes would start confusing people, but I feel as if this is a mode all by itself and needs to have integrated, just like with the customization for when you choose a particular weapon and you can choose an attachment, these should also cost credits, so you can fine-tune your loadouts before you get into Hazard Zone and say that, oh, for my assault rifle here, I'm going to want an extended barrel, that's going to cost me 30 credits. I'm going to want a specific magazine or 2 sets of magazines, which is going to cost me more, and it feels like it's more ingrained, and the more you play, you should level up and unlock more things like you could in the main game. As I said, people might disagree with these things, but I feel as if it should have its own progression, because if I've progressed in the main game, I can just choose, as long as I've got some credits, best weapon with all my attachments, with everything, and I can go and collect drives and exit out, and it doesn't feel like there's much more to it. I had an idea of making Hazard Zone a little bit more versatile, because Hazard Zone, it was maybe the original big idea that they wanted to compete with a battle royale. I think it should have a way to add your personality beyond regular customization that they will have across the game. It should be a custom set of logos or something to be able to personalize across Hazard Zone, and maybe use your Hazard Zone credits to purchase new things that could customize logos and things for, say you made a clan, or say you made something for your platoon which was featured in previous games. So maybe you could choose a set of armor that you could customize with putting the way that it looks, and again, they could charge extra for these customization pieces, because like I've been saying, that it feels like Hazard Zone should be its own incorporated mod with its own leveling system, with its own customization, which is different for the main game, and so you can make a logo designer and an armor or variant designer, which would be more beneficial to players. I think the core gameplay experience has seen improvements when you're playing any mode, Conquest or otherwise, other than the UI, the user experience, the specific things about classes, and otherwise it works quite well. I think there is a particular problem with hit detection. I find that when you're on the turret on the tank, or you have the LMG which is on the tank, it does often seem to miss characters, and you be directly aiming at them and it won't hit them if they're running across, and it just seems odd whether you lead in front or otherwise. It doesn't seem to hit them. People have had problems with hit detections, but I think things across the board seem reasonably balanced in terms of the way that the tanks move. You have to be quite accurate in terms of using vehicles to kill enemies, so disregarding those facts, most of the mechanics don't seem too abusive. The sprinting, jumping, and most core mechanics work fine. So now when we're here in the main menu, you can see we could cycle across 3 different buttons. For reference, this is PlayStation 5, so you may have a different experience on the PC. Navigation may well be better. This is just my experience, and the user experience generally on the console is not very good in my personal opinion. With the main menu here, we've got the 3 different tabs. You could say that, yeah, this is easy for people to understand. They can choose to get straight into each of the mode, and that's perfectly fine. But I feel as if we've got wasted space at the very top. It looks a bit incoherent at the bottom. We've got some followers on Twitter. We've got different size text. Yeah, we've got a QR code. I feel as if the QR code, you can't even go to it. It should be its own page which pops out in the center and gives us some more information on, if we're a beginner, we need some tips and tricks on how to play Battlefield, but it doesn't have that, and I feel as if it's missing it, and it just feels that these scrunched up at the bottom bottom were not meant to be there. It just feels makeshift. It feels like they just slapped it in unnecessarily. And I'll put up a screenshot here from a Reddit user called For a Hamster, and he's got a bunch of selections and squares which feature the most prominent things that you want to do in Battlefield. And yeah, it could do with a little bit of refinement, but lets you click and get to everything without having to click to other menus. I will say that as you can see in the bottom left for accessibility, when I press start, it goes to just general settings. Now when I go to any other mode, hazard zone, portal, or anything, there now it's classed as options in the bottom left. So there's some discrepancy on how they've named it. In here, when you're navigating the menus to decide what you want to do, navigation is fine between these menus, but I feel as if for specific things which have an on-off radial toggle, like this, it should have a more distinguished to what is on and off, because sometimes you can't really tell because the highlight over them is the same color as the on-off button. So from Reddit user ibidibidoo, they've got a distinction that you can see enabled and disabled for all the different effects which have an on and off toggle. The player card, these function perfectly fine. I think it's a nice way to display the different badges. I could feel that these could be slightly smaller on the left because we do have previews on the right here, so it could be a more bunched up box because we do have to scroll down a long way to get to the bottom, and maybe we could have more rows just to cycle through. I will say in Portal, on the main featured screen, the information is a little bit wasted and could be better displayed. On the main browse section of Portal, it's not automatically, for whatever reason, filtered by ping. It should be automatically filtered as such, and then also filtered by best ping with the most player count, but I can't do both at the same time, so that's a little bit annoying. It just filtered and it shows me random matches with only 1 and 2 players in. And when you go to the collection, I think it should be named something else. It should be saying Portal loadouts or something, and then you can go to Battlefield. I feel as if it should take you to loadouts and options at the top here, rather than it being a selection along this side. And when we go onto the weapons, we can make customizations to the options that we have if the weapons have customizations. But again, when we get to this screen which lets us change between weapons, I think we should be able to customize from here, because I don't have any option. I have to go back here and then press square to customize it. I think it's a bit counterintuitive. And on All Out Warfare, when we're on here, I feel as if we have a little bit of wasted space where we could have some more information about. On the right hand side, you can see that's where players would join. There's a big picture of your character, which isn't really necessary for this, but we've only got 1 square on the bottom left to show what game mode we're going to play. And the game mode here, I feel as if we have to click to press square to go into it to change if we want to play multiplayer or solo. And then we've got Conquest or Breakthrough, which could be tabs, as I showed you with the original, with the main menu that the user had made on Reddit. It feels like here we've got space for more boxes that could be added across to allow you to have a quick get into each of the things without having to flick around L2, L1 and awkwardly navigate between the experiences that we've got. And when you click into the options, that you can press square to customize like you could when I was showing you for Portal, but then you can click on all of these weapons to show what is your catalogue of weapons, and now you can't press square to modify them in here. You have to go back and then choose one first and then customize it, and I think it's a little bit too many steps to be able to do the same thing. And I do think that the way to customize and navigate between what you've got to be able to equip to your weapons could be fine-tuned, and from the same person on Reddit, ibidibidoo, has got a nice way. Instead of it being featured across the bottom, it's now you can select the tabs to choose whether you want to change the sight, ammunition, underbarrel or barrel, but it's nice in a quick confined list, so it's actually in front of your face to begin with, and the stats are in the bottom corner, which makes it much easier to see from a glance rather than navigating to the bottom of the screen where your eyes aren't normally drawn to. And this information at the bottom, which is about firepower and accuracy, could be put to the top right if they really wanted to, if there was enough space, but I think it's a good place there because it's not really as important. You can glance down there depending on what you actually want to use. And again, there has been issues with allowing you to keep your upgrades on the particular items, because sometimes they default back depending on which mode that you've been in and if they actually save your presets that you've set, We also suffer from issues with crossplay and turning our crossplay on and off. DICE originally announced that the crossplay was going to be able to turn off between the current generation of console, whichever one you're using, and then also with PC, but I think there's been other issues on the Xbox of not being able to turn crossplay off at all, maybe because of console-wide settings, but it seems to be an issue and there's no way to turn off PC specifically to avoid hackers and other advantage-based issues that you might face. There's no actual settings, which I don't understand how a multiplayer shooter with very cooperative modes doesn't have voice chat by default, whether it's in early access or not. I feel as if it's a massive oversight and I'm not sure why it isn't there. I like the fact that you can do customizations on the control mapping, so whether you're on foot or in a vehicle, you can do and change that, but there is an issue that when you change custom vehicle buttons or air control buttons and you set them anything other than custom, once you've changed them, it does crash the game instantly. And I do think we are lacking a training mode, so you can change the game mode, go to solo and co-op, and you choose conquest or breakthrough and choose beginner, but I want a really small map which will have a really quick load time where you'll be able to test out all the weapons, all the vehicles really fast, have a little shooting range. I wanted to touch on the maps very briefly, and I want to say that all the maps that are in the game suffer from mostly being far too big even for 128 players, and could do with, in the intermediate sections where there's a lot of arid wasteland, to be able to have some more cover. Like in Hourglass here, we've got the stadium, the small village, and then the city in the background. In the middle is a lot of wasteland. Maybe it was there for vehicle combat and air vehicles, but I think it really needs more cover for inventory and things like that to be able to do it. It's not one of the worst maps, but I feel as if it could do with more. Discarded again between the carrier sort of broken ships and the main points. There is a lot of wasteland with not a great deal of cover, and it's quite easily to get shot down in between. The Manifest, I think, is one of the better maps because it has various bunches of lots of cover. You've got all the containers which allow you to hide behind, in and around from vehicles, air vehicles, and lots of different close quarters engagements, along with Kaleidoscope. I think is probably one of my least favourite maps because, as you can see, it is extremely open, and I feel as if it just doesn't work well. It needs some more barricaded areas or some areas with buildings that you can hide in. It's just so big. Yeah, you can go on some of the skyscrapers in regards like in Battlefield 4 and things like that. They had Siege of Shanghai, which was only one real road that went down and some skyscrapers in between. This, you can just get hit from so many different directions. I just don't think it feels very nice to play. Orbital, I think, one of the better maps, but again, the buildings are very sparse. There's not much in them. It's just like we've got a cargo container in there and that's about it. I feel as if it is one of the better ones because it does have major points, plenty of cover, forested area. Again, a lot of travelling to do, but you can spawn a vehicle to take that away. I think Breakaway are probably the worst map on here. I think it's a great looking map, but it's absolutely ginormous, and for 128 players, if you had a smaller version of this map and you added in some more modes which were like a Conquest Medium or Conquest Small, which shrunk down some of these maps, they could be better because it is absolutely crazy ginormous. And obviously, like I say, you need a vehicle to go across them, but it's probably the worst experience that I've had on a Battlefield game from this map. And the last is Renewal, which has the segregation between the sort of arid desert and the sort of built up renewed area. The renewed area has a lot more buildings and stuff to hide in. It's got a little bit of open space in the center. I think it could do with some, by the main building on this right side, it could do with some tweaking and maybe some more buildings that you could run in and out of. The wasteland doesn't really have much going on. I feel as if it could be more interesting. There could be some maybe small little villages that you could run in and out of, aerial vehicles, because there isn't much to hide from other than this section